Here comes episode 2 of the first chapter of my hiking along and around Kungsleden series. Let me remind you, this one is not really a vlog as it comes from my pre-YouTube days, but you'll see a lot of pictures, drone footage and videos with my commentary on top of them. Let's dive in. We're looking at days 4 and 5 of my hike. On day 4, I wake up in Vistas Hut around 4 in the morning to catch the sunrise. Today, I go through my absolutely favorite area. I passed this same valley a year before. No, I'm not doing exactly the same hike, but I've been to a part of it before. The area is absolutely beautiful. The trail is not marked, but you can see it well enough, apart from some bouldery areas. It starts with a steepish uphill, but at the top you are rewarded with a gorgeous waterfall. This is another spot where I get stuck for ages. I mean, just look at it. I cannot put down my camera. I love hiking in September. There's considerably less people, no mosquitoes, and the colors are just wow. Actually, my favorite part about this specific bit of the trail is that it's pretty empty. I will meet only one couple of hikers along the way. I'm walking along the valley, snacking on energy bars here and there. The scenery looks like something out of The Lord of the Rings, and the weather goes perfectly along with it. It rains here and there, but that's not the main problem. This area is always quite wet, as many parts not on Kungsleden trail. It's mud, puddles and streams which you have to ford. And this year, the water in the streams is extremely high. I haven't seen anything like it neither the year before nor the year after. I'm not sure if it had been raining a lot or some snow was melting in the mountains, but a couple of streams that were only about an ankle deep before were now knee-deep, and there were many more of them. I spent a lot of time walking up and down the stream, trying to find a place to ford without getting my feet wet. And you see, the water in those streams is freezing. As you ford, it's just extremely painful, and then you lose feeling in your feet. Since last year, I started fording without taking my shoes off. Some people carry an extra pair of shoes for fording, but I prefer to carry an extra soft and dry pair to wear inside the hut. I used to take my shoes off at the beginning of my hiking adventure life, but then I heard that you can cut your feet really badly and not even feel it in the icy water. Plus, the stones are extremely slippery inside the water, so taking your shoes off kind of means that you might end up sitting in the water with your backpack. Be it as it might, at some point I just decided to ford with my shoes on. Doesn't mean that I like it though. I hate wet feet, and the feeling of that freezing water in the shoes, it's quite annoying. But I just accepted that hiking is often extremely uncomfortable. And that day, my shoes got extremely wet, and they remained wet for the rest of the day. My first goal for today is reaching Nallo Hut, which is only 10 kilometers away from Vistas Hut. Actually, last year I skipped Nallo Hut and I went straight to Selka, but I think the location of Nallo is the most beautiful of all the huts that I've seen before. That's why I had an idea of staying at Nallo for the night. Even more, I actually decided to stay there for 2 nights. As 10 kilometers is not that far, I decided to add an extra goal for today. I would like to try to get all the way up to Nallo Mountain, which is just next to Nallo Hut. And the last obstacle before the hut was the river that I had to ford again. And the year before, it was really shallow, so I could cross it without actually having my feet wet. But this time, just when my shoes started getting a little bit drier, I had to cross the river to get to the hut. And my shoes got completely wet again. So annoying. And here I indulged in sitting in the warmth of the hut for a little bit to have a cup of tea and a couple of energy bars, and then I left the heaviest stuff behind on my bunk bed, and I was ready to try to conquer the mountain. You start going up straight away, along a pretty amazing waterfall. The terrain is easy at first, but quite soon you start climbing across a boulder field, and that makes it considerably more difficult, especially when it's been raining and all the stones are quite slippery. But at some point you get to a beautiful glacier lake, and it's just amazing. I spent quite some time by the lake. I was taking a lot of pictures, trying to fly my drone, although it was so windy that again I was kind of afraid of using my drone. That's why I don't have that many drone videos, but the pictures are quite nice. And then I started going up, which was not that easy, because if you can see, it's again a boulder field, and all the stones are so wet and slippery that I was moving very slowly, just trying to be careful of my ankles and knees. And then eventually I got to a point with a really beautiful view. That's where the weather became even worse. The rain picked up and I could see that all the tops of the mountains are covered in the clouds. So basically there is no point of going up. You can do it as an exercise, but you will not be able to see anything at the end. Plus, I have to confess, I was a bit tired and also wet and hungry. And at this point, I just decided to turn back. I have to say that going downhill, especially on these bouldery kind of fields, is even more difficult than going up. That's why it took me quite some time to get back to the cabin. At the cabin, I was able to put my shoes by the fire to dry them. I did some chores, like bringing green water, as usual, cutting some wood, and I even got an amazing pie baked by the host. It was really lovely, and it was so nice to just be in heat, with my feet finally dry, after a day of enjoying this freezing water in my shoes. Next morning, I was up early. The reason I stayed at Nallo for 2 nights was that I wanted to walk to Unna Raitas, which is a tiny cabin by a beautiful glacier lake. This is one of my favorite areas around Nallo, and I just love leaving the cabin behind and looking at this amazing valley. The weather was okay at the beginning. It was raining a little bit, but not too much. It was also not that windy when I started my hike. I had to cross a stream and a river, and as I mentioned, the water was really high. And from the beginning of my hike, my feet were extremely wet and cold. But as I was going further and further towards Unna Raitas, the weather became much worse. The wind picked up, and now I kind of know, being at this point twice, that in this valley that goes towards Unna Raitas, it's always extremely windy. But the wind was horrible. It was so hard to push against it, and the rain was strong and just freezing. I'm wearing my amazing raincoat, which means that at least my upper body is dry. But you know, my shoes are full of icy water, and my trousers are wet probably up to my hips, especially since the wind is really strong and tries to lift up my raincoat. And my hands were so cold that I really couldn't feel my fingers at some point, because the temperature I think was around 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, which is not that cold. But when it's really windy and cold and you are wearing wet gloves, it makes your hands extremely cold. What helps me through these periods, where I can't even raise my face up, trying first not to sleep on a stone, and second just trying to protect my face from the raindrops that start hitting it with painful force above a certain wind speed, is occupying my mind with an audiobook. And I remember that day I was listening to one of Richard Osman's novels, which are quite funny and cheerful, and that really helped me a lot. There were moments when the rain would stop and the sun would come out a little bit, and it would make everything around me so amazing and dramatic, and I think I made one of my best pictures during that time. I felt horrible though. I was so frozen and discouraged that I really felt like turning back a couple of times. But at the same time, it's very nice when you have a goal in mind, and I really wanted to get to that cabin, and I was imagining how I would get inside a dry space, and that made me walk further and further. And at some point I got to this amazing glacier lake. Look how beautiful it is. And I just had to walk around that lake to get to the cabin. I think the most annoying thing about this hike, apart from the weather, were the boulders. Almost the whole hike I had to go across those boulder fields, and I really hate them. I'm not used to hiking on something that uneven and slippery and dangerous, and it really annoyed me a lot. So when I got to the hut, I was exhausted. It's a lovely cabin where you can spend the night if you'd like to. I tried to warm up a little bit, to dry up a little bit, had some tea from my thermos and my energy bars. Obviously, I failed in getting warmed up. It was still freezing, I was still wet, but I couldn't stay there for too long because it was time to go back. But I'm so happy that I actually got to this place, because the place itself looks pretty amazing. If you walk out of the cabin, you are just on the shore of an amazing glacier lake, and there is this crazy stone in the middle, so the pictures look quite amazing. And then, if you look around, there will be another glacier lake just underneath you. So basically you are on the level of one of those lakes, and you are above the other. But then, as I said, I had to go back. And you can't believe it, but the weather got even worse. And it was so windy, it was so cold and freezing that I don't even have many pictures from that time. You know, people look at my pictures and they say, look, it wasn't too bad. Well, the truth is, and that I just cannot take pictures when it's really bad. Because first I'm trying to kind of stay warm inside my cocoon of my raincoat, and also I try to protect my camera. That's why you don't have many pictures from my way back. I even slipped when crossing one of the streams and ended up sitting in the water. So you can imagine how happy I was to get back to Nallo hut and to have my warm dinner and dry my clothes and my shoes by the fire. But you know, the most annoying thing is that at sunrise the weather became just amazing. Why couldn't it have been like this before when I was hiking? But still, look around. I was so amazed that I even forgot about my drone, which is a bit of a shame. But still, the pictures are beautiful. And just check out the location of Nallo hut. It's amazing. And then, after this difficult today it was time to go to bed, because tomorrow I have a very long day. But you will hear about tomorrow in my next video. So if you got to this point, please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe, and don't go away yet, because I have a little funny ending for you, similar to my previous video. Some funny videos that I made for my Instagram. Well, enjoy, and I hope I will see you next time.